Good afternoon. So, I wanted to do a little short live here today at 1 o'clock because we talked a little bit actually about this particular thing during our regular rope report live this morning at 9 a.m. here on these channels. And I thought it would be something that I really wanted to do before we go into legislative session to really be clear about what it is that we send our legislators to do at the legislature when we elect them. And I found it interesting. I'm just going to throw this up. This was an article that I put up just this week, I think yesterday, about a comment that our Speaker elect Hilbert made about what his legislative priorities were for the year. And if you, the whole article came from an Oklahoma Voice article. And basically he was quoted in this article as saying, in this upcoming session, if we pass two bills, a state budget and a bill reducing the usage of cell phones in public schools, it will be one of the most substantial legislative sessions that I've experienced. I don't want to be ugly and I don't want to be unkind, but there are several reasons why this particular thought process is completely wrong. I'm just going to say it's completely wrong. Now, I mean, obviously, we need to do a budget, but I want to talk a couple of things up about the bill, particularly the cell phone bill itself. And if you'll go to the article on rope2.org, I've got it linked because I never want to talk about something that you yourself cannot look up yourself. You may not have the same opinion about it that I do. And the only way to find out about whether you agree with me or not is to go read it for yourself. So I've got the link in there so you can go do that. So there are lots of problems with it, but I kind of distilled it down to four. And here's what I want to talk about. What's the point of having a school board? What's the point? If we're going to send legislators to the Oklahoma legislature and tell them that they have to create laws that are going to encompass things that would override parental choice, individual rights, whatever that might be, if we have a chance to solve a problem ourselves or at the local level in our communities, government should absolutely stand down and let us take care of it at that level. Because otherwise, what's the point of having local government? If we're just going to have a state government, a federal government even, come in and dictate how we're going to run our lives, then what in the world is the point of having local government? Lots of people will say things like, well, it doesn't get done. These kinds of things don't get done. The school board doesn't pay any attention to. Okay, well, guess who's in charge of the school board? You, taxpayers. I don't even care if your kid goes to a public school. You still have the right to sit on a board. I would prefer that all public school boards were made up of parents in the public schools. However, if that's not going to happen and parents are just too busy to do that, people from the community who understand school board law and understand that school boards are the voice of the people in that school and that school boards have all the authority of the school, all of the authority. They can hire and fire the superintendent. The superintendent doesn't tell the school board what to do. It's completely the opposite direction. So if the school board wanted to say, hey, superintendent, we're not having a cell phone policy, or hey, superintendent, we've got to have a cell phone policy and we want to put one together, then that's what happens. But having a state legislator say, you know what, I'm creating a cell phone bill, and then worse, having the Speaker of the House say, yes, that's going to be one of my priorities. So he's saying one of my priorities is going to be to override local control. Now, whether he meant to say that or not, I don't have any idea, but that's exactly what happened. And that's exactly how that came out. It's interesting because as I wrote here, on one hand, we get so irritated because kids won't behave in schools, and then parents won't follow up on how the child acts. And I've been a school teacher. I know this. But here's the deal. The more you usurp that parent's ability to parent, the more lack of parenting you're going to get. And that's what authoritarian governments do. Authoritarian governments usurp the power of the individual or the parent or whatever that might be for whatever end they have that's important to them. So I think that's something that we have to think about. And I think it's a very important thing that we understand fundamentally before we go into this next legislative session. So this is a new law. Okay. Exactly how many laws do we have to restrain parents or individuals or Oklahomans? Or what about schools? How many laws do we have to have for schools? I mean, couldn't you actually say that part of the reason why schools are out of control and stink on ice is because of the fact that they're buried under mandates about this high? It's so easy to misperform or underperform or malperform when you can say to yourself, well, I didn't even know that was out there. Well, is that really a rule? Oh, well, we have to do this. And how many times have parents said, well, I've gone to the school board and I say, well, this can't happen, or I don't want this to happen. And then they'll say, well, there's a law for that. Well, why should there be a law for that if there's a school board there to be able to help the parent make decisions about the education of their children? So again, how many new laws does Oklahoma need? All right, more problems with the bill. This bill actually forces the schools not only to create the policy, but then to create a discipline policy for the policy. So let's say that the school has a policy about cell phones, and then they don't have a disciplinary policy that goes along with the cell phone. So the kid has the cell phone in class or whatever, and he's not even disciplined. Okay, fine. So let's just say the school creates the discipline policy along with the cell phone policy, but then they don't follow the policy. I mean, how many times have we had people like Maria Seidler, our attorney friend in Tulsa, come on and say, I've tried to get schools to follow the Parental Bill of Rights, but there's no mechanism in there to make them. So a parent can't literally go to them and say, well, here's what's going to happen if you don't do this. So we write these bills that don't have any enforcement in them. And so then they just become what's the point of the bill? Well, it made somebody look good because they could say, well, I put together a bill to stop cell phone use in Oklahoma schools. Okay, but the problem is that sells. People actually look at the surface stuff and they just say to themselves, oh yeah, she did great. And nobody's ever thinking about the layers underneath that. Okay, well, aren't there other rules or regulations or laws that schools don't follow? And then parents bring it up and say, hey, you're not following that law. And then they just go, okay. And then what do? We had that problem with Common Core. We wrote the bill, we repealed it from law, but there was no mechanism in there to make the school stop teaching Common Core. So frankly, then it just didn't teach it. Or it just kept teaching Common Core because there was no law to keep them from teaching it. So we've got the exact same problem that we have with this particular issue. So there's a bill, but there's no mechanism to force the school to do any of this stuff. So if the school just turns up their nose and says, not doing it, what are you going to do? Who then is responsible for that? So it's a meaningless law. I think that's another problem that we have. All right. Here's the other one that just absolutely flabbergasted me. Inside the bill is a plan for schools to get $2 million in grants to provide schools places to put cell phones. $2 million. friend of mine made a point earlier that we couldn't even write $25,000 or something into a bill to make sure everybody got pictures on their voter ID cards, but we can give schools $2 million to buy baskets to put cell phones in. I mean, the absolute ludicrousy, if that's a word, idiocy is a word, of that, that's, how do you justify that? Taxpayer, I'm going to get into your pocketbook and I'm going to steal money from you up to $2 million so that we can afford for you guys to individually buy baskets for your class to put, or whatever. It's ridiculous. Any teacher, and I've been a teacher, so I'm not speaking out of turn here. If I had taught in the era of cell phones, which I did not, I actually, right before that, I quit. So if I had been teaching in the realm of cell phones, I would have said, guys, here's the basket on my desk. Just put your phone in, at the beginning of the class and then come take it out at the end. Or I would have said, hey, you guys keep your cell phones, but if I see it out, I'm confiscating it. Okay, or it's not going to be on your desk. You don't need to have it, or I'm confiscating. There are like 8 million different ways to solve that problem other than giving schools $2 million. I mean, wouldn't you say? So here's the other thing about that too. And this was pointed out after I'd written my article, and somebody pointed it out in our conversation this morning with the ladies from Broken Trust. And they said, here's the thing. You take that cell phone away from that kid, and then that kid can't record anything that shouldn't be happening inside the classroom to show their parent. So if you're going to take the cell phones away from the kids, you better have CCTV in every classroom. I think that makes perfect sense. As a matter of fact, Michael even chimed in and he said, yes, in one of the high schools in Edmond, one teacher for sure that his daughter had would come around and say, you got to put all your cell phones in here because we're going to talk about stuff and I don't want it getting out on the internet. No, that's wrong. We're not doing that. So you're either going to say, we're going to confiscate cell phones, but then we'll put a CCTV in each room so that parents know what's going on. Maybe it's even a live feed so parents can watch it during the day. Why the heck not? There should not be anything going on in a classroom that a parent couldn't come in and see during the day. Nothing. I'd have no problem with having a CCTV camera over my shoulder. It might even be protection for me. So these are some things to think about. So let's look at what the Oklahoma Constitution says. In Section 2:1, it says, all political power is inherent in the people, and government is instituted for their protection, security, and benefit, and to promote their general welfare. And they have the right to alter or reform the same whenever the public good may require it, provided such change not be repugnant to the Constitution of the United States. Well, there may be a few problems there, but the point of the matter is, our state constitution says that we, the people, hold all the power and that government is instituted for my protection, my security, and my benefit. How? Okay, maybe we ought to really digest that and make sure that our legislators know what their job is. Their job isn't to write bills. Their job isn't to listen to lobbyists and collect money for their campaigns. Their job is to protect the security of every individual in Oklahoma. That's what it is. So let's look at that particular bill on this level. So how does that apply to the Oklahoma Constitution? Well, it usurps the control of government, which removes the security of citizens, because citizens should be secure in knowing that the government is in their hands. It removes any benefit at all to them by taking the issue into the government's hands. Dana says, because they stopped working for us in our Constitution a long time ago. That's exactly right. This is why we need to learn this. We need to learn this. And we need to tell our legislators, you're not up there to write new law. You're not up there to do anything. If you have to write a new law to protect my security, my liberty, and my personal safety, then that's a different thing. But we're not up there just to write new laws. Okay. So there you go. Number two, it creates a new law and that removes power from the people and gives it to the government, because anytime the government writes a law, the government has power over you, because that law will come with some kind of prohibition that you are then meant to follow. You have to wear a seatbelt. You have to wear a helmet. You have to do this. You have to make sure this happens. You have to get a car tag. This is the way they control us. And then as a benefit, take money from us to make more laws that then control us. So no, new laws are bad. This law is meaningless because it doesn't accomplish anything. We just talked about that. Meaningless laws cause the people to suffer. So even if prohibitions were added that forced the schools to create a policy on this issue, excuse me, it would do little more than once again remove the power from the people or parents to deal with the issue. And then it puts it way back up top in the government and out of our local hands. Again, it takes more dollars from taxpayers to buy unnecessary items, and that's burdensome to the liberty of the people. The economy's hard. Parents need to keep their own money, not have it given to schools to do things that they don't need to be doing in the first place. All right, so let's see this. What must the legislature prioritize instead? Well, let's look at some of those things. How about if we prohibit private businesses from receiving public funds to do businesses in the state? So, for example, we just take away all tax credits and incentives for private businesses. That would actually restore free enterprise, because we don't have it now. We have government controlled Pinocchio enterprise where the government gives a tax credit here, gives an incentive here, and then this business is elevated over the other business that doesn't get the tax credit or incentive. Okay. So that would actually restore an even playing field for people who own their own businesses. Let's think about Canoe. Right? So the government promised them all kinds of money. They would come here. Canoe promised that they would bring us all these jobs, right? And then what's happened with Canoe? They've had to file bankruptcy. They've let 82 people go. They only hired 100 people. We offered them all of these tax incentives. Now we're going to have to claw them back from them. I mean, how just simply ridiculous. People need to keep their money and not allow the government to steal it from them and then help businesses. So that would be another thing. How about if we prohibit income taxation and property taxation? Our Constitution says in Section 2.2 in inherent rights, quote, all persons have the inherent right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the enjoyment of the gains of their own industry. We had Representative Jay Stiegel, who's running a bill to begin to repeal income tax in Oklahoma. We had him on the show to talk about property taxes, and he talked about that. And he talked about how property and income are both what they call gains of our own industry. Government should never be taxing us on those. So let me see. The government would much prefer to tax us on our income and our property so that we don't have any gain of our own industry, but they're happy to give $2 million to schools for baskets to put cell phones in when they don't need to be creating a law on that in the first place, right? Okay, so let's think about, how about this one? How about we prohibit eminent domain for turnpikes, solar installations, wind turbines, electrical corridors, or anything that allows private businesses to conduct business in this state? Taking the property of the people should only be done on very dire consequences. And yet you have the OTA all over the state taking away private land so that they can add yet more concrete for cars to drive on, which, by the way, they had told us initially we weren't going to have to pay tolls on. Then all of a sudden they do. So how about that? Why don't we do that then? It's really true that a private wind turbine company like Invenergy shouldn't be able to take property away from Oklahoma citizens to create an electricity transmission corridor that would then help them get the energy from their wind turbines out of the state. How does that benefit Oklahomans? It's not even going in the state. That seems like a huge problem to me. All right, what about this? Let's stop giving money to public schools that don't educate children. I mean, how many years, and Sherry Conley just talked about this morning on the podcast. We have given Oklahoma public schools money after money after money so that we can be 49th in the nation and have 15 to 20% of kids in any given school be proficient in math and reading. If that were a business, we would not frequent that business. We would not give that business any of our hard-earned dollars because they're not doing a job, let alone a good job. Why do we continue to just give money in a hand over fist without expecting some kind of accountability for those funds? Oh, but then don't get me started on the money that we give to private citizens to put their kids in private school instead of a public school. See, we just need to fix the public schools, solve everything, or parents just need to take their kids all out and homeschool them. Whatever. The point is, this is a problem. What about this? Why can't we perform investigations into taxpayer black holes like the OTA? What about that? What about OKDHS? What about mental health? Just saw today that one of the facilities that shouldn't have been there. So the AG comes out and then basically says, well, this is coming from the DOJ. We don't trust the DOJ. We feel like this is a way to bully Oklahomans. We just on our program had Roberta Lewis tell the horrifying story of her son being kidnapped by Oklahoma DHS. So our AG would rather use Oklahomans' innate dislike and distrust of the federal government to not do his job. He's the one that could call for investigations. He could call investigations of DHS, and yet we're going to be trying to collect signatures for a grand jury. Guys, we've got to start being so much more careful about what we believe in. So what can we do here? What can the people do? First thing, contact your legislator. Talk to them about what the state constitution says and follow what they're doing at the state capitol. When they start promoting legislation that you don't agree with or that doesn't agree with protecting our liberty and safety and rights, then you immediately tell them, get them on the phone. Excuse me, Mr. Legislator, this is wrong. And here's the reason why. Please don't vote on this. Please don't run this bill. Please pull this bill back. Whatever that is, do it. Number two, until we Oklahomans understand the function of our state government, we can't educate our elected officials. So at least read the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. And if you don't know where that is, go to rope2.org and find the article that I wrote. And I've linked it right there. You can go right to it and read it, because if you actually try to find it on the state website, shockingly, you won't be able to find it. It's empty. There's nothing there. Michael reported that before we left for vacation. It's just not there. So I've linked it. You can find it. It's right there. And then what you need to do, show this video explaining it, share the that part of the Constitution that talks about our liberties and our rights, and make sure that our legislators are following that, and point out how, just like I have with this silly cell phone bill, point out exactly how that doesn't do anything, that doesn't uphold any of our rights in the Oklahoma Constitution, let alone the national Constitution, federal Constitution. Go to a place like Legiscan or follow OKHPR or OK2A or Oklahoma Save Oklahoma Farms and Ranches on Facebook. I've got all of those highlighted so that if you go to the article, you can just click on them and find them and follow them. They'll tell you about legislation that's happening this year and how you can stop it, or how you can actually say, hey, this is good legislation. We want to support this. So either way, you can go to the legislature, oklegislature.org, I believe it is. We'll have to see. Go just Google Oklahoma legislature. You can go there, and down at the bottom of the front page, it says follow legislation or type in a bill. Do that. You can also go to Legiscan. Legiscan is another website where you can put in information about bills and you can follow those bills along and get information on them. Do that. I mean, I know we're all busy and everybody is like, when am I going to find time for that? I've got to do this and that and the other thing. I totally get it. But here's the thing. If we don't prioritize that this year, we're going to end up with a lot more laws, rules, and regulations than we wanted before. We've got all kinds of things going on at the Capitol this upcoming year. And you have lobbyists that are there in force, especially the green energy lobbyists. We've got to make sure that we are saving and protecting our liberty and rights as citizens of Oklahoma. And we need to make sure that those legislators are there and upholding that for us. So that's just my quick kind of down and dirty little discussion about one particular bill that, if you really look at it, doesn't do what it, well, I guess it does what it says it's going to do if we let it go through. But the point of the matter is, we've really got to sit down, look at this legislation that's coming out, and figure out how it either helps us or it hurts us. And if it does the things like usurping local control, taking government out of our own hands, taxing us more, taxing our property. And you've got to remember, anytime the government says, well, we're going to give this money to this corporation, or we're going to give this money for this, or we're going to put this money toward that, it's your money. That Oklahoma government does not have a tree out there in the oval, where it grows money. It's all our money. And we had the largest state budget in our history last year. All right, that'll do it for me for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and just paying attention and listening to my rant about this bill. Please contact your legislator. Say, no. Please contact Representative Hilbert and say, we're kind of on the wrong track here. Let's not start off on the wrong track. Let's start off on the right track, and then give him an idea of what that is. Have a great weekend, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on Wednesday at 9 a.m. on these same channels for Rope Report Live.